Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of Dare to Lead virtual. We're so delighted to have you rejoin us, and some of you may have joined us during our dine around breakfast and had a chance to see Will's breakfast and his delightful cooking talents and use of a unique ingredient, I'll say. Anyways, we had a bit of a good little chat then, and we've got a great lineup of speakers for today. So I will just kick it off, and please, like yesterday, use the chat, get on Twitter. We had lots of interesting chats on Twitter too, if you're so inclined, and just connect. That's what Dare to Lead is for. So please reach out to any of the Canada West Region board and ask questions or whatever. We're happy to help out. So this session is a little unique as well. It is IABC. It was pre-recorded or recorded at IABC's Leadership Institute back in February, which some of us were able to virtually attend. The session that we're going to watch together today is called Revenue and Reputation Hacks. And it was one of the best attended sessions, as well as one of the best received sessions. There's lots of great tips, lots of great tricks, and we hope you enjoy. So without further ado, we're going to kick it off, and thanks so much for joining.
There's about 3 of them out there like this that I'm like jazz hands or something. It's not good. Right. Hello. Danielle Bond. On what we're calling revenue and reputation hacks. And the idea is that we hope that you will all leave today's session with some inspiration, some ideas that you can take back to your chapter. And more importantly, you'll also have the opportunity, because we'll share the material with you afterwards, and on the Leaders Centre, the team have really graciously are uploading as much material about their revenue or reputation hacks so that you can just pick it up and run with it. And more importantly, you'll also have a friend that you can phone for guidance and advice, because they're also sharing their details with you. So can I welcome my 6 presenters, Merrin Fabre from the Victoria chapter. Merrin's actually, the AGM in Victoria chapter was last night, so you're now the president, Merrin, welcome. Merrin is going to speak about a professional development grant program that her chapter have run for the last several years. Can I also welcome Rebecca Shaffer from IABC Chicago. Welcome, Rebecca. And Rebecca's going to share with us some work that they've done around lower price sponsorship packaging, which will be, I'm sure, very helpful for all of us. Connie Feick from IABC Greater Cincinnati, who's going to talk about how they've been maximising network connections. Kerry Burke from IABC Nashville, who will share with us what they've been doing in the virtual world, making the most of our virtual reality. And from Houston, and thank you so much for joining us, Deanna Werner. Texas is doing it tough with power. She's got a glass of wine though, so she is in the moment to share her story, which is Sip and Learn. Networking 9 with wine. I'm dying to hear it, and it's good to see she's living that reality. Hope the power stays on. And Elisha Sutherland from IABC Queensland here in Australia, talking about their ultimate revenue hack, which is having a financial strategy. So we've got 6 presenters, probably about 10 minutes each. We'll take questions as we go. Hope to have some time at the end. Also, obviously, there's chat, so please dive in. Let's just start with Merrin. So I mentioned that she is the president of IABC Victoria. She also works as a senior communications professional for the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing in an internal communication change management and employee engagement role. And has done, you'll see on the web, done some amazing work, inclusive work with different communities around social cohesion and acceptance. Over to you, Merrin.
Hi everyone, sorry, I'm just trying to unmute myself. I'm really excited to speak to you today. I am the president of the Victorian chapter, but today I'm speaking to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Noongar people in the southwest region of Western Australia. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and we celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Western Australia. Our professional development grant program, we've been running at IBC we started it a couple of years ago. And I'm really excited to talk to you about it because it is something really close to our hearts in terms of developing and building diversity and developing communicators. So we can go to the first slide. To begin with, I just wanted to give you a snapshot of our chapter and who we are and who we are culturally as well. Physically, we're one of the biggest chapters outside of North America, and we're the biggest chapter in the APAC region. And we love certification. We are really fortunate to have Sia Papagiorgio in our chapter, and she has been instrumental in the uptake of people undergoing certification across the APAC region. And now our chapter has 15 certified members, which we're really proud of. We also have some strong connections with universities. So as part of our board, we have a student and academic liaison. And for the past 3 years, have been building up relationships with our universities. And so we have student ambassadors at a lot of the universities in Melbourne. We have a presence at their open days and student communication events. And we have a new a student academic liaison person as from last night, from yesterday, and he lectures at university. So that connection for us will only get stronger. I've put in there that we have a warm, friendly, open environment and we have a focus on the benefits to our members, and for that is something really important for us to ensure that, and across all ABC, I'm sure that our members feel welcome and every opportunity that we have contact with them. And the focus on the benefits to our members is something that the board holds really dear to its heart as well. We have a social contract that each of the board members agree to. And within that contract, it essentially says that whenever we're facing challenging decisions, we need to think and we need to say to ourselves, is this decision the best thing for our members? So for us culturally in our chapter, that is extremely important at the forefront of all our thinking. And finally, I'll put in there that we're financially stable. The reason why I mention that is that because of that, it gives us the ability to focus on different actions or activities without really being worried about our bottom line. We like to watch the bottom line, but we're not, it's not always at the forefront of our thoughts. So that allows us to design a program like the PD grants, which is more reputation-based, but it is also allowing us to give back to our members and to the communication community in Victoria. If we can go to the next slide, it'll just give you a little bit of information about our membership, and it's about their years of experience. And looking at this, you're probably not surprised at all that within our chapter, we have a significant amount of senior and executive communication professionals. We don't have as many early career comms professionals. I did mention we have student ambassadors, but our younger cohort is nowhere near as extensive as our senior members. And we have very little to no representation of people with disability and Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And our younger cohort of comms professionals and these other two demographics, it's sort of a cohort of people who may not be able to access the IABC due to structural or social barriers. And as you've already know, and it's been discussed at length at LI, is that we need to create a pipeline of succession and we need to have diversity in our membership and leadership. And so with the professional development grant program, we're targeting it at people who may have structural barriers to career development, and will help us build a pipeline of communication professionals to help continue to build, to continue the chapter and to see it go stronger and stronger. So what I'll do is go through the program and how we've set it up. And I've given Michaela all of our documentation. So if you need to know anything about the application forms, the process, all that can be made available to you. So with the professional development grant, the goal of the grant is to support a comms professional to be an IABC member, to develop as a communication leader, and to contribute to the IABC Victoria goals and outcomes. And we wanted this grant to be more than just getting a free membership. We wanted to ensure that the people using this grant were able to build and develop their career and be supported in doing that, and have exposure to leadership opportunities and people in leadership so that they would become the next communication leaders. We also wanted to ensure that we could foster greater equality and inclusion within IABC Victoria. So when we looked for people to help sponsor these grants, we did look within our own membership and cohort of people to help ensure that our members who are in those senior levels are giving back to the community in a different way to other ways they already do, and also ensure that we're showing our membership that we are sort of giving back and being part of the Victorian chapter. This comes with being part of the chapter as well. If you can go to the next slide, that would be great. So this is the structure of our program. So it is a 2-year program because we thought that 1 year was just not enough. So, and we could get sponsors to cover an individual for 2 years. So they get membership. They get free attendance to all our events. We're trialling a mentoring program this year. So they, if they choose to, can participate in our mentoring program. They have attachment to our board, which means that they commit to 40 hours assistance to our board over the 2-year period. So it's about 20 hours a year. We did this for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted people to have exposure to the board and how they operate and some of the things that they do. But also we did it because the board needs support to continue some of its activities. So it's a bit of a win-win situation for us to be able to give the awardees some good work and to help them have a leadership experience. They also receive career coaching sessions. So they would have at least 2 hours of career coaching every 6 months. That's about 8 hours in total to help with their career development. To run the program, we found partners who would provide financial and in-kind support. And with the eligibility, as I've mentioned, it's groups with a limited capacity to become a member of IABC due to cultural and structural social barriers. We'll go to the next slide, please. And I'll talk about how our partnerships were formed. So what we did was enable 2 partnership opportunities for people to engage with. So they could have been a naming partner, and the naming partner provides the financial support. So they would pay for the membership and they would pay for attendance to events. And what we would then give them is promotion. So they would get to, so they named the grant and they would then have promotion on our website and they can promote it outside the organisation and then those normal benefits that you would get when you're supporting a program. And then in addition to the naming partner, we needed a professional coach sponsor, and this person would provide formal coaching sessions for our participants, as I said, 2 hours every 6 months. And they would then become IABC Victoria's preferred coaching partner. So we would promote them as such in our communications. Now, an organisation could take up both opportunities. They could be the naming partner and they could provide a coach, or we would find separate partners to combine it to make one professional development grant, which is what we did in the case of the grants that we put together. We can go to the next slide. I can then talk about the 2 grant sponsors and what sort of happened there as well. We ended up creating partnerships with 2 businesses and 1 career coach. Now, Hope and Glory, the Hope and Glory grants, Hope and Glory as a business are recruiters for media marketing and communication executives. They supported 2 grants which had different criteria within them. They supported a grant for people with disability, and that was something they in particular wanted to do as part of their value proposition. And they also supported a grant which sort of encompassed a whole heap of people who could apply for it. So that would be culturally and linguistically diverse. It'd be people who might be transitioning into the communication field from another career. It'd be people who might be returning to the comms field after career break, and it would include early career professionals, so it's a bit of a big catch-all for those as well. And supporting that was Adrian Copley. Now, we love Adrian Copley. He's been a big supporter of IABC Victoria over the years, and he's the CEO of Copley Communication and the Centre for Strategic Communication Excellence. He's an IABC fellow, and he's amazing, and he is providing the career coaching for our recipients of the grant. We also had This Is Creative supporter grant. They're an Australian Aboriginal owned creative and event business, and the criteria for them was that the applicant needed to be an Australian and Torres Strait Islander individual, and Adrian was to provide the coaching for that grant as well. When we advertised these grants, we wanted to make sure that the process that we had for applying and the selection process was fair and equitable, and also could meet and support the needs of our applicants. So they needed to submit an application to us, and in terms of the information they needed to provide, you could provide a CV detailing your experience, or you could provide an essay about your communication experience, because in some areas there could be people who don't have that traditional, this is my degree, this is the work experience I've done sort of flow. We wanted people to be able to tell us what their experience with communication is and what their aspirations are, so we can get a sense of who they are. And we also held informal meetings with them so that we could talk to them about their goals and aspirations, but we wanted to do it in an environment which they felt comfortable in, so they can put their best foot forward at all times. And especially if there was any additional requirements that people may need, if they had, as a result of, just how their life is running. And from that, we were able to fill 2 of our professional grants, and 1 remained empty. If we go to the final slide, I can go through how we're tracking so far. So we designed the program in 2019 and it started running in 2020. We were able to fill the Hope and Glory grants. And as part of the process, we did get a lot of applications for the Hope and Glory grants. That was what we called a transition grant, which covered cold applicants, the early career professionals, and transition professionals. And we ended up with 1 application for the people with disability grant, and we filled it with that person because we thought it was perfectly acceptable to do so. And what it highlighted to us was that we actually don't have the connections within our chapter to fulsomely get this promotion out to enough people to get a number of applicants in. And so what we're looking at doing now is trying to make sure that we are building connections to be able to, when we offer these grants again in another round in a year, we're able to get more applicants in, to be able to give them the opportunity to be able to access this grant. With our This Is Creative grant, we weren't able to fill it, and we tried a couple of times to promote and get applicants for the grant. We tried at the end of 2019 and we tried into 2020. We even contacted a lot of Indigenous agencies and organisations to help promote the program and to get applicants. in the end, when we spoke about the grant with our sponsor, This Is Creative, they suggested that maybe the grant that we're offering doesn't actually suit the needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communication professionals. And so what we really need to do is think deeper about what we're trying to do and what might be the best way of building that diversity and increasing and building a bigger network of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and representatives to help add that diversity of thought within our chapter. All of this is still very embryonic for us, and we're still trying to work our way through it. But I think we're off to sort of a good start, and hopefully over the next couple of years we can kind of build our relationships to help make this a better program as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Merrin. Thank you so much. That's really fantastic. I might just invite people to put questions into the chat, and at the end of all the presentations, we'll come back to that. But that was a terrific session. Thank you. And Merrin's shared her contact details there. Could I now invite Rebecca Shaffer to take the stage, the virtual stage. Rebecca is going to talk about lower price sponsorship packaging. And you may have seen in the profiles, Rebecca's the managing partner of Reagan Consulting Group, responsible for growth strategy, operations, marketing and business development. Thank you, Rebecca, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I'll start with this slide, a little bit about the Chicago chapter. We have about 170 members right now, with a board of 17 people. So you'll hear a little bit about that as I go through some of our revenue hacks and reputation hacks, because having a big board is very helpful to do some of the things that I'll talk about today. We are in the greater Chicago area. We attract people from, of course, Illinois, but also Milwaukee and Indiana. And apparently, and maybe there's somebody who's listening in who may think differently, I don't know, but the story goes that we are the oldest IBC chapter, started in 1924 as the Industrial Editors Association of Chicago. And then in 1980, it changed to IBC Chicago. So I thought that was pretty neat when I was doing a little digging. When I took on the presidency, being the president of the chapter, and found this out, I was like, oh, that's pretty impressive. So that's a little bit about our chapter. So what I'm going to talk about today, and you can go to the next slide, Michaela, are these 4 points. So sponsorship, I'll talk about how we've adapted our sponsorship in this 2020-2021 year, as well as our events, some ad buying we've done with social media, and then an on-demand library that we are currently working on. So let's start with sponsorship. So when I took on the role of president in 2020, I was shocked to find out, and maybe not too shocked because we all know we've been going through COVID and a pandemic, but all of our sponsors abandoned us. They said they couldn't continue to support us because of budget constraints. And of course we understood, and we knew that it was going to be a struggle this year in general to keep revenue going, as many of you probably have felt and were worried about who are listening in today. So we had to put our heads together to figure out how can we pull in some new sponsors, create revenue in other ways, but also build reputation so that if we're not even able to recoup everything this year, but going forward when the budgets start opening, how do we make sure that people look to us as a source of education, a source of truth in the communications industry, etc. So the first thing we did is we looked at our threshold, our tier thresholds. We had platinum, gold, and silver, and they were pretty high priced, each of them in the thousands. And we thought, okay, the first thing we have to do is lower the price so that at least one of them is not in the thousands. So gold was 750, silver 750, gold 1,500, and platinum 3,000. And then we said we have to do a one-off webinar sponsorship. So that there's even lower price point to get into being a sponsor. So at $450, we created what we call the webinar sponsorship. So that was the first thing, lowering the price of all of our big year-long sponsorships and adding a one-off sponsorship of an event. And then we looked at what the benefits were, and we really felt like we don't have much to lose, so pile in the benefits. So we added lots of things, and even for the one-off webinars. So you can have, once we had events that we were charging for, you could have, depending on the level of sponsorship, you could have up to 6 people attend for free. We offered in the packages certain amount of LinkedIn posts and Twitter and social media posts about their organization, coverage on our blog about their speakers, and so on and so forth. So we really started adding more tiers and then more benefits for each of those tiers, because we really knew it was going to be a challenge to recruit. And luckily, this has worked out for us so far. So far, we've been able to bring in about 5,500 in sponsorship, which we're very pleased with. We were thinking that, it's going to be a struggle to bring in any at all. And so we are pretty thrilled with this, with a few more months of the term to go. And so what I would say about this is what to keep in mind. So the first thing is you have to produce for them. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to social media and events up next. Once you get the sponsors, the hard part really begins, right? So now they're on board, they've given their money, whether it's 450 or the 3,000. And it's a lot of money for them, because it's a time where, many people are struggling in their organizations to find budget. So we really feel that it's important to deliver. And so that means delivering several seats at an event that they're speaking at. So I'll talk to that next. And then the second piece is the feeding and caring. So once you create those packages, you have to deliver on all those things. And so it helps to have a team who can write that original content, schedule those posts on your different social media sites, and make sure that they're coordinating, all of the tech checks and the check-ins with the sponsors, because they really want to make sure that they're getting a return on their investment. So Michaela, you can go to the next slide. So that leads us to events. So we decided, because of these sponsorships, because it was a success, that we needed to add more events. So now we do an event every month, sometimes more, but we've tried to scale it back to just one a month in 2021, because in 2020, we were doing about 2 every month, and it was getting to be a lot and was pulling from each other. So we've moved it to 1 a month. And we had this debate about pricing. So we started out with a tiered approach. It was $5 for students, $10 for members, and $15 for non-members. And in the early days, it was gangbusters. We get 100 people to an event, and 50% of them are paying in some form or fashion at some level. And we were really, patting ourselves on the back, saying, okay, this is great. Our sponsors are thrilled. But then as everybody else sort of caught up to that whole virtual event world, we were seeing so much competition, and a lot of events were free. So we had to come together over 2 different board meetings because we were having trouble making a quick decision. So we thought about it, it took about 2 months for us to figure out what our new plan was. And we decided that we had to go with the thought of reputation building as opposed to focusing on revenue first. And so we moved away from the paid model to a free model. So now if you were to go to our site and look at all of our events, which we have them posted through June, through the term, that was another thing that we thought was important, is to get them out there and visible, so that when you land on our site, you see like there's a lot going on, a lot of opportunity. So those are free now for members, non-members, and students. But what we decided to do was do pay what you can. So we changed when you register for an event, we suggest either a $5, $10, or $15 pay what you can. And then underneath it, we have a boilerplate that explains what the money goes towards. So we have a little about IABC Chicago, and when you support us, it allows us to bring, great speakers to you, etc. It's just a little couple sentences, but it helps support the idea that, your money isn't going to waste. It's helping sustain our chapter. And so we've seen a success with that. We had our pretty successful event last month, and that was the first one we did this model with. And so we're really quite pleased with it. So some things to keep in mind with this approach: one, lots of coordination. So when you have more frequent events, you need a lot of people on your team to do those events. So we have 3 dedicated events team members, and they take turns working with the speakers to book them. We also have very formal processes around it, and after this event, there'll be a posting in the Leaders Center. So I included what our event intake form looks like, and also what we ask from our speakers, so you can see that. And also from the previous slide, you'll see our sponsorship packages too, and what we give with it. So you'll have that. So the coordination, that's something to think about as you increase events. The second is the donation rules. So I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. So as a chapter at IBC, we're a 501c6 and not a 501c3. So that means that you can't call them donations because we collect our money through PayPal, and there's restrictions around that. So it's important just to do your research around that, depending on where you are in the world and where how you're collecting money and taxes, etc. So as a 501c6 organization, we say pay what you can and not donation. All right, Michaela, next slide. Okay, social media. So this was new to us. We were trying to figure out how to build our following, and we focus mainly on LinkedIn, even though we have our largest following on Twitter. So of course we still pay attention a great deal there, but this year we've decided to focus a lot on LinkedIn and building our following so that we can try to get more people interested in the membership. And so we are experimenting this year with ad buying. And we were able to do that because, again, back to the sponsorship. So the events that are sponsored, we find in ad buys. And so we set a budget of $250 for events, and then we lowered that because we realized, oh, you don't need that much for every single event, but having a sponsor allows you to put that little bit of budget towards that. And so we purchased ads, and we've seen a really big increase in the impressions, shares, and comments on our content. So that's been very exciting and worth it to us, we feel, to get the word out about what we're producing. And then the follow us feature, again, in my handouts after, I kind of did some screen captures of this, but we take a new member each month who can go into our LinkedIn page, the company page, and they're able to invite their network on LinkedIn to follow our page. So we take turns, one person picks people from their network, invites them, and then it's been helping us increase our following so that hopefully we can get a few hundred more follows here through the end of our term and start building it up for the next forward year. And then the content mix. This is an example of one of the content mixes. Get to know Anthony Fleet. He's a member of our board. So we're trying to not just have event content, but also personal interest, of course. So, you know, spotlights of our board, spotlights of our member. We also spotlight our speakers. We ask them some personal Q&A questions and we put those up. And we're starting a new series around things, the necessary things to get you through the day. So just sort of a fun, now that we're all working from home so much, or most of us are, you know, the things that really help us stay sane and keep going, and what a typical schedule looks like for people. So that's a new column that we'll have coming out. So what to keep in mind here, ad budget goes fast. So make sure that you really do your research on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whichever platform you're using, because the algorithms are all different. And so you want to be sure you know what your budget is, that it's firmly set. I come of not doing that early on, and you go and check and you're like, how did I spend that much? Because it's based on clicks on LinkedIn, at least. So so just be sure that you know what you're doing before you dive in. Luckily, we have an expert who does social media for a living at his job, so he's able to set those up for us. But that's just an important tip because it burned me in my professional business. And then manpower for the original content, making sure that you are grabbing volunteers. Again, we have 3 people in our PR marketing team, but even that wasn't enough. So we do call on volunteers, even if it's just asking them to contribute 1 piece a month. And we've seen that to be very helpful. All right, my last hack is on-demand library. So this hasn't launched yet. So this is just a preview because I thought, you know, many of you guys could also think of doing this. Hopefully I'll have a good case study next year for this, or the president-elect will. but we're creating an on-demand library. We've recorded all of our Zoom presentations, and with one a month and almost 2 a month at times, it's a pretty good library of content and a lot of different topics. So we're going to create a gated page where we'll have all of the recordings, we'll have the PDF handouts, and we may even do some other add-ons, like we create these things we call burn after reading, and one of us just kind of does a cheat sheet on the event. So people can download that and see, you know, preview of what is in the presentation. So that's something that we're going to do. We're going to talk about it at the next board meeting, if we're going to charge members or not. We haven't decided, because, you know, you want to make it, you know, add value of being a member, that you get certain things. So we have to debate if we're going to do a nominal fee for that or not. But it'll definitely be a good revenue generation for non-members who want access to that. What to keep in mind, of course, release forms. So once you record somebody on Zoom, making sure that they know it's being recorded and that what you're going to do with it. And since we will be charging people at one point, we actually have to get a release form so that they know that that's being done and that they sign it. So we have that somewhere in our files. And then website support, we use WordPress for our website, so it's pretty user friendly. So just, you know, grabbing somebody, asking somebody in your membership who has a, you know, website background in their title, you know, or in their bio, and asking them to help you with how you figure out how to gate the pages. It's a pretty simple process, but it's really helpful if you could tap your members to help you with that feature, and then you can provide them with a, you know, free membership to the on-demand library. So it's something that I think will be great as the years go on and it becomes such a bigger library, because this is, of course, the first year where we've done all these virtual events. But as COVID and the pandemic, you know, as goes on and has taught us that it's possible to work from home, a lot of companies are going to continue that, or in hybrid. So we are going to continue having a lot of virtual events mixed into their live events. So we'll just keep building the library. And I think that's my last slide.
Rebecca, thank you so much. And you can see Rebecca's details there, some fantastic ideas and entrepreneurial thinking by the Chicago team. Please, I can see some good chat happening whilst we're presenting. So with time at the end, we'll come back with questions, but otherwise have the conversation through the chat function. I'd now love to introduce Connie Feick from Greater Cincinnati. Connie's going to talk to us about maximising network connections. Connie has worked for many years in our field. Currently, she's the Senior Manager of Provider Relations for IMED Vision Care, a fast-growing vision plan in the States. So welcome, Connie, and over to you.
Thank you very much. So to start off a little bit about our chapter, some perspective for those of you not in the States. Greater Cincinnati is that little corner of the bottom of Ohio. It includes members from Indiana, Northern Kentucky, and also because unfortunately the Dayton chapter disbanded a few years ago, we also have a contingent of members that are all the way up in Dayton, which is about, I guess, about 50 miles north of here. One thing I think that's different from those who've talked already is that we are a smaller chapter. We average between 40 and 50 members every year. And unfortunately with COVID, we are, losing membership as companies are not paying for them and people are having financial difficulties. And so we have what I would call a small but mighty team of a board that's we average about 10 members in total. So most folks are taking on more than one role, or they're taking a role where they don't have a lot of support underneath of them. So we're often trying to find ways to get things done and effectively and economically, because we are a smaller chapter. I will add that, Rebecca, we might have to check the stats because we are actually 41 years old, which I think puts us at 79 for Greater Cincinnati. So we may have to come back to that. But very proud that we have had a long-standing presence in the community. One thing, though, that is interesting in the Cincinnati area, and maybe it's not different than what others are seeing, but I feel like there's a lot of competition, for lack of a better term, between professional organizations. And so some of the hacks I'm talking about, like, I think are kind of a unique approach to it, because we have a harder time getting sponsorships because we've got PRSA and we've got other organizations that are a little bit more, I would say, integrated with some of the larger companies that would do sponsorships in the area. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about 3 examples of maximizing your network. So much like they say when you're looking for a job, it's all about who you know. For us, it's been all about who we know, and this is how we've had some great successes over the last couple of years. So the first challenge we had was called actually Challenge Accepted. So for our 40th anniversary back in 2019, we wanted to do a big community event, and we also wanted to give professionals in the area a way to showcase their work. This was the largest event that we ever took on. We had never done anything quite like this before, and we had a pretty tight budget for it. We wanted to also give back to the community, so we wanted the prize to actually be a charity donation to the winner's charity of choice. I did want to throw in that this program did win a 2019 Silver Quill Award, the Heritage Region. So I think we can, kind of, it's an exciting thing to share that it was definitely a success. So if you can actually click, Rebecca, I'm going to talk about our solution. So how did we pull together this event that was unlike anything we had done before, with a very limited budget? It was all about using our connections. The first thing we did is started asking people, who do you know? We had the logo and materials were actually designed by a graphic design student who actually happened to be my daughter. I will take a little bit of credit for that connection, but it allowed us to get professional quality design work done on a much smaller budget. It also gave her a great opportunity to build her portfolio, so that was a win-win. We also reached out to all of our networks and were able to get donations for just about every tangible item that we needed for the event. Everything from printing the programs to the actual award that we gave, swag bag items, the entire environment, even the MC was somebody that our chapter president knew through connections. And if you want to go to the next slide, you'll see some of the outcome of this work. So we actually had a local employer who helped sponsor so that it offset some of the costs for the event. You can see here the custom logo and the program that the design student designed for us. Our MC, who is a former Olympian, so came with a lot of prestige and a lot of value, so to speak, behind her. Even the flowers that we used to decorate the venue were donated, and we even had some chocolates donated from one of our sponsors, the Zumwalt company, so that we were able to create this really nice, inclusive, warm event that people really felt very special when they came. They were, it just had a nice vibe to it, and yet we did it through all of these networking relationships that we had, so that we were able to cover about 3/4 of the original budget of the event. And it was a huge success for us, for the chapter, and for all of our sponsors of the event as well. So if you go to the next slide, I want to talk about another way that we maximized our network, and that was through our chapter website. So a couple of years ago, actually, when I took over as Vice President for Communications, I was a little bit discouraged by our website. It was pretty old. It was at least 10 years old. And it was built on an old version of WordPress, and we didn't have a lot of flexibility. We had very little tech support. And then as we started to increase the traffic on the site, we started having outages. Servers were going down. It actually was right when we were trying to promote that event. So if you could click for me. Michaela. The solution that we came up with was a very innovative sponsorship. So we have a local agency, a small boutique shop, probably 20 employees total, who had done work for several of the board members. And they had started to get involved with IABC, the local chapter, and had really become a great partner. And so we actually went to them and said, hey, we're interested in having you become a sponsor. And they came back with the proposal that they would do our entire website for free. And so they actually not only did the redesign, they did a replatform for us, put on a new tool that was much easier to use. And they actually recommended a new hosting company, which in the end saved us more money. So if you want to go to the next slide, you will see what our website looks like today. Unfortunately, I could kick myself because we didn't take screenshots of the old website. So I can't show people now what an improvement this was. But Sanger and EBU is the local agency who did it. And they really did it with us in mind, and also working with the IABC brand guidelines, making sure that it met our needs as well as our members' needs. So then lastly, if you want to go to the next slide, our chapter newsletter. So we didn't have one. So the problem here is that we were only communicating with our mailing list when we had an event. And we realized that this was a huge missed opportunity, not just for promoting the chapter or trying to get new membership, but we were not offering value to the members. And we wanted to change that. And we didn't have a place other than the website, which was somewhat static, to put value-added content. So if you could click for me, Michaela. The solution that we came up with was a win-win sponsorship, is what I'm going to call it, for in-kind services. So there is another local vendor who had actually been very active with IABC, both at the regional and international level. I actually met them while attending a world conference, even though they're headquartered here in Cincinnati. So they had already seen IABC as a great partner for them because their primary audience is internal communications teams. And so they actually came to us and said, hey, we would love to set you up with our tool, which I'll tell you a little bit about here in a second. And we'll do it free of charge as long as you give us credit for it. And we were like, sure, this is great. I had actually was a customer of theirs by this point. So I already knew how great their tool was and how powerful it could be. So, I was completely on board. But for them, it was a great opportunity to regularly have their name in front of potential customers that were their target market. So they set up the account, and then not only did we have this great newsletter, we had some additional benefits. One is that the way that the system integrates with Eventbrite allowed us to cancel our constant contact account, which was more money savings, and it integrated with our website so that the content that we post on our website goes automatically into the newsletter. So as volunteers, we are not having to spend so much time, taking content and putting it on the web and then putting it in a newsletter. And really though, what the huge value for us was is that it created a home and a channel for us to provide value added content. So if you want to go to the next slide, you'll see what we got from this. So one of the things that we do is we have an automatic RSS connection from IABC International so that all of their content goes immediately into the newsletter. We also have some other communications resources that we do the same thing with. So the newsletter that you can see there on the left, it is automatically generated from these RSS feeds and from content on our website. As you can see at the bottom, it does say that it's powered by Circle somewhere down at the bottom. And that is a company, and that is their kind of free advertising that they get. And so now we are not just communicating when we have something that we want back. We are giving content to people. We are giving value. We have seen our click rates go through the roof. We've seen much higher engagement. On the left is the e-blast format that we got with the platform as well, which allowed us to get rid of constant contact. Again, very flexible, just allowed for a lot more integration. So, you know, my tip is always just the first thing that we as a board do is say, who do you know that can help us out? What's also interesting is that we had no sponsorships at all before we embarked on this. And we found our first 2 sponsors have been fabulous partners, and it's been, we've really been able to take our communications to the next level. So between all of these things that all of these people that we know and all of these connections, we've been able to have both a hugely successful event on a shoestring budget and some great new communication tools. And I did forget, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my contact information on the slide, but I will make sure that I give that to Michaela to pass along.
Thank you, Connie. That was really fantastic. Really impressive work. Now, my friends Kerry, Deanna, and Elisha, we have 40 minutes to go. My challenge to you is let's bring it home on time. But some really terrific presentations. Kerry Burke is the head of IABC Nashville and is going to share with us how Nashville have made the most of our virtual reality. For her day job, Kerry is, I'm just really scanning, you're currently working for Cigna, I believe, Kerry, as a business communications lead. So welcome, thank you, and I'm going to hand the baton over to you.
Thank you, Danielle, and I will try to keep it short so we can finish on time and have time for questions. So as Danielle mentioned, my name is Kerry Burke. I'm the 2021 president for IABC Nashville, and I'll be sharing a little bit today about how our chapter has made the most of this virtual reality that we're all living in. So first, I'll introduce IABC Nashville. Our chapter is based in the heart of Music City, which is Nashville, Tennessee, USA, and is comprised of communications professionals in the Middle Tennessee and the Western Kentucky regions. So like the IABC of Greater Cincinnati chapter, we are a small but mighty chapter as well. We have about 35 members, but a very strong connection with our local communications community. A lot of non-members are involved with us as well. Our members are diverse. They represent an array of industries and backgrounds. We host networking opportunities, including professional development luncheons each month, more informal social networking mixers throughout the year, and then our annual awards program and ceremony. We're really, really proud of the close-knit community that we've built, and are especially proud that our efforts were recognized with the 2017 IABC Small Chapter of the Year Award. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So as was the case for many of us on this meeting right now, March 2020 was not a great month for Nashville. On March 3rd, a devastating and deadly tornado ripped through our city. Just a few days later, Nashville had its first case of COVID-19, and then about a week after that, the world essentially shut down as we all knew it. I remember we had a networking mixer planned the week before the lockdowns began, and when news started spreading about COVID-19 and the lockdowns, we weren't really sure what to do. You know, do we keep the event? Do we cancel? What's the right thing to do in this situation? Questions I think we all asked ourselves around that same time. So we got together as a board and decided to err on the side of caution and postpone the event until we knew a little bit more. So, you know, maybe by April things would be better. And I think we all know how that worked out. So we were faced with some really big decisions at the chapter. Go ahead to the next slide. And I'm proud to say that we persevered. When things started to shut down, we made the decision to continue our professional development and networking events, but to go virtual. It was really important to us to continue to offer these opportunities, especially at an isolating time when people really need connection the most. We made a small investment in purchasing a paid Zoom account. So it was about $150 for the year for the level that we got. And we learned how to use it. So of course there was trial and error at first. We learned a lot of things along the way, but thankfully we avoided most major Zoom mishaps. such as the Zoom cat. I don't know if y'all have seen it. If you haven't, I highly recommend looking it up after this if you need a quick laugh, but we avoided that, thankfully. So we quickly pivoted from entirely in-person events to entirely virtual. We only had to postpone one of our events while we were figuring all of it out. We also started recording our presentations, which was something we had never done before, and shared the recording and the slides afterwards with attendees so they could go back and reference. So here on the slide, you can see how our pricing model changed as we switched to virtual. One big difference from normal times, 2020, just not being in person, we're not offering food, we don't have a venue, so that means we don't have to pay a venue or catering fee. So although we definitely were not making as much money as we had in previous years on our events, we also weren't spending a lot. And so we were and we are still making a little bit of money, and we were able to maintain that connection with our community, which is really important to us. You can go ahead to the next slide. One of our greatest realizations throughout this time is that although virtual does not replace in-person at all, it does have its advantages. For example, there are no geographic limitations, which I know we're all enjoying right now. So if you're busy on a work day, you can't make the 20-minute drive to the event, that's okay. You can quickly log on and log off to the virtual event whenever you can. This also means that, as we're seeing this week, people can log in from literally anywhere in the world. And I know a lot of us have taken advantage of that in the last couple months. So we leveraged our relationship with Southern Region and International to expand our invite lists. We also took advantage of promoting our events on the regional and international event calendars, which I think a couple of people have mentioned they did as well. We also hosted an event in partnership with the award leads for IABC Southern Region and the Atlanta, Kansas City, and South Carolina chapters. And I think actually a couple of the speakers might be on the call today, so hello. And we had more than 130 attendees at that event, which is way beyond our normal attendance of 20 to 30 people. And despite challenging economic times, we actually grew our chapter membership in 2020, and we were awarded the Small Chapter Growth and Small Chapter Retention Awards as part of the October IABC Member Month campaign. You can go ahead to the next slide. So what were the events that brought in the most money for us, the most popular topics? And our top three were our Difficult Conversations workshop, our diversity and inclusion panel, and our most recent presentation about increasing transparency in talent acquisition. You can see the breakdown on this slide, along with our total income from virtual events in 2020. So that number is in addition to our two events we held in person prior to the lockdowns and going virtual. So you might be wondering why the awards event that I mentioned earlier is not on the list, since it brought in our highest attendance. You can go ahead to the next slide. And the reason is we had decided to make this event a completely free event since we were mainly targeting IABC members and people interested in entering our awards program, which is typically our biggest moneymaker of the year. So lesson learned, we probably could have kept our original pricing model of free for members, $15 for non-members, and made a little bit of money. But we live and we learn, and we were happy to get a lot of people together to learn some tips and tricks for their award submissions. You can go ahead to the next slide. So as I mentioned, our awards program, the Music City Gold Pens, is usually our biggest source of income for the year. In 2020, we were forced to pivot to virtual for this as well. To be respectful of what everyone was going through, we did push back our deadlines and reduced our pricing, as you can see here. And instead of our usual lunch or dinner awards ceremony, we partnered with a local video production studio and held our celebration virtually on Facebook Live. We secured several sponsorships to cover some of the production costs, perhaps not as many as we would have liked given the economic climate, but the event was a huge success. It was really well done, very professional. We got a lot of great feedback. And we reached almost 4,000 people on Facebook and saw our highest social media engagement of the year by far. You can go to the next slide. So we've of course learned many lessons from 2020, as we all have, and the challenges that came with it. But the biggest takeaways for our chapter specifically were Number one, be adaptable, which is something I know we've all had to do this past year. Number two, don't be afraid to try new things. It might work, it might not, but you won't know until you try. And it's the only way you'll find innovative ways to keep your program going. And number three, remember that we can still stay connected even when we're apart. We just might have to get a little bit more creative. You can go ahead to the next slide. So thanks so much for being here and listening to our virtual journey. I hope this helps give a glimpse into how our tiny chapter made the most of the virtual reality that we're all in. And I hope you'll connect with IABC Nashville on our social media channels. And please stay in touch. I'd love to hear from you about maybe how your chapter has responded to the challenges of the past year, or perhaps about any innovative approaches that you have to connecting with your communities. So thanks. I hope to hear from you all. I'll send it back to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Kerry. Fantastic. Some really clever ideas and some good conversation, Kerry. Pop on to chat because people are interested in how you came up with your topics. It's my pleasure now to introduce Deanna Werner, straight from Houston. Deanna's going to talk about Sip and Learn. I saw this on social media. I follow Houston and the podcast that your chapter produces, and I saw this event and I, of course, liking a glass of wine, was intrigued. So Deanna's been on the board of Houston chapter for several years and is the VP of Finance. She's worked as a comms professional in many industries, sports, education, and most recently, energy. Over to you, Deanna. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle, and cheers, everyone. So my portion of this presentation here is a little bit different in that I am focusing on one event that we put on as more, not so much as a revenue builder, but more as a relationship builder. But first, let me talk a little bit about our club. IABC Houston was selected as the 2020 Medium Chapter of the Year and International Chapter of the Year. So that was a fun celebration for us last year. A couple things that are unique to us are that we have an entrepreneur strategic interest group. So they put on events as well as our normal chapter events each month. As Danielle mentioned, we also have and provide a business communicators podcast. Now, the podcast mainly explores the trends or key issues that impact our profession. A little bit about what we had going on in 2020 was that we as well changed pretty quickly with the time and what was going on. We didn't miss any sort of chapter events. So once March hit and our speakers got canceled, our locations got canceled, we went right to virtual events and pretty much just traded over everything from in-person to virtual. Our first webinar had over 300, close to 300 attendees. And that was mainly because of the panel that we chose. It was a very popular county judge who was a previous county judge here in the area, talked on crisis management and COVID. So at that time, obviously, it was very popular. Then from March through August, we offered the rest of our webinars free during that time. And then come September and October, we did start charging, but we made sure that our members knew the money collected would then be given to various nonprofits. So that's kind of how we eased into our charging of our events. And if you could go to the next slide, speaking of events, if anyone would like to attend, our events are free for all IABC members global. And you can see the little IABC February 2021 is the code. If you're not IABC Houston member, that's on Thursday of next week. IABCHouston.com is where you can go. Now, rethinking how we're doing events. This event in particular, our Sip and Learn Networking 9. One of the goals we have in IABC Houston is to have fun, because you can give all the programming you want, but if none of it's fun in some sort of way, then I don't think it provides as much value. And we were also trying to get rid of that Zoom fatigue that everyone has and probably still has. So our Networking 9 events are members only, small groups. And they, prior to COVID, they were more like a dinner, sit down dinner. But during COVID, what's better to substitute dinner than wine? So we have a different board member host our networking nines each month. And the goal behind them is just to have a little bit more intimate conversation, connection, and then to build deeper relationships with members of our chapter. So the idea behind the wine portion specifically was that it's one of the things, the alcohols that you can open and share, but everybody still has the experience that is unique to them in their tasting. And that's kind of what we wanted to try to portray with this event. And we partnered with Vinology, which is a local bottle shop and tasting bar here in Houston. And again, it's all about who you know. So through our board members' connections, someone knew the owners of the company. And they were already starting to do virtual wine tastings, so they had moved quickly as well. But due to being a small business, I can't say we had a full in-kind sponsorship from them, but we did get the wine at cost and the expert to take us through the tasting as well at cost. So that cost to our members was $30, and that included a wine bottle that was hand delivered to their door, along with the wine tasting and then the conversations we had following. You can go to the next slide. So who do we invite and how was it promoted? Well, as we said, this was a members only event. And once we started getting the wine deliveries, it started creating a buzz. And that made the event a lot more fun. So you can see some of the posts on social that everyone was sharing, getting their bottles, and then also, during the event. We had the board member who had the connection with Vinology, was on site and provided all of the technical aspects that Vinology could kind of piggyback off of ours. It was our highest attended networking nine to date since we went virtual, which is pretty fun. And I made sure to, since we wanted the connection to be a little bit more intimate, I made sure to reach out and give personal invitations to people that I thought would be interested. And that really helped. Every single person that I made that personal invitation to came to the event. And besides, our normal promotion, the rest of the members were through email, social, website. That's how they joined. And that next slide, please. As I mentioned, one of our board members is also a really good videographer. And I don't know if we can play this or not, but he put together, if you can, go ahead and play, but if not, he put together an amazing 40-second video that really captured the fun behind the event. So just show people that, hey, you missed out on a really good time with IABC Houston last night. And but check it out sometime, either on our website. We can't get it to play. The feedback that we received. The feedback in general, all positive. The results of this event, everything from the connection to the fun to, mentioning specific things they learned about chicken and champagne somehow going together. If you've never tried it, there you go, give it a shot. It was really the connection that some of us were lacking that we could kind of gain through this event during that time. So how could this work for you and your chapter? First of all, think and answer this question if you want to make it more of a revenue making event or a relationship building event, and then go from there. You can go to the next slide for me. So if you want to make it more of a revenue making event, then search around. I'm sure once companies like small businesses, especially in the wine industry, start getting their revenue back, I'm sure a sponsorship would be something that they'd be interested in. So a full sponsorship, and then think about, charging your members more or getting a cheaper wine. I wanted to have a solid wine as part of this event as well. And another thing would be to bring your own bottle. Just list the bottle of wine that you are going to have your expert talk about, and then have each member go and pick it up on their own and just have it ready for the event. And again, it's all about who you know. We now have a good relationship with Vinology and plan to do another event with them, if not online, in person, when things get back to in person. And it's really kind of who we targeted as well. It was definitely a members only event, but you could tell that the personal touch did make a difference. It wasn't just an auto-generated email, oh, do I want to attend this or not? It was that personal outreach. All right, and next slide. If you want to reach us, we are at iabchouston.com and IABC Houston on all social media. And then next slide, you can also reach me on LinkedIn or by email at finance@iabchouston.com.
Thank you so much,
A little bit
Deanna.
about our wine event.
Thank you so much, Deanna. It's terrific. I just love that. I just love that idea. I'm sure for many of our chapters, it's something that they can pick up and run with. So our last speaker, and we are at just 1:10, so we're doing well, team, is the president of IABC in Queensland, Elisha Sutherland. Elisha is going to share with us the ultimate revenue hack the Queensland chapter really looked at was to think strategically about their finance and to develop a financial strategy for the chapter. Elisha has worked for more than 15 years as a comms and engagement and change leader, and I think is currently working in financial services. So thank you, Elisha, and I'm going to hand the baton to you.
Hi, everyone. As Danielle introduced, this afternoon I'm going to speak about the ultimate revenue hack, which is crafting a financial strategy for your chapter. And just quickly, who is IABC Queensland? We're still relatively small, but a humble chapter here in Queensland in Australia. We have about 70 members. But what's really important to call out is that probably only around 3 years ago, we had between 20 to 30 members. So we've almost tripled our membership in that time in the last couple of years, and our numbers are growing really steadily. So we've got a lot of great momentum and growth. And as an example, last year we held, I think 12 events actually in the year. And we launched our IABC Queensland company LinkedIn page only in August, and we've already got over 400 followers. So we're going really well. There's some great momentum here in Queensland. So my first slide, just to give you a quick overview of where we've been and where we've come from. Obviously, this might be a very similar experience to a lot of other chapters around the world. Our pre and post-COVID shift for IABC Queensland. So pre-COVID, obviously all of our events face-to-face. At those events, we incurred venue hire and catering costs. We were changing venues at different times, depending on whether we had a sponsored venue or depending on what the actual event was. Our speakers were normally locally based, or otherwise they were from elsewhere and needed to travel to actually present in person. As a chapter, we made few, if any, strategic investments. We were very, very reluctant to spend money and erode our balance. And life was just business as usual, pre-pandemic, along with everyone else. It was all just pretty normal, BAU. And we had a healthy, but it was a fluctuating financial position. But obviously with the experience of last year, which we don't need to go into, and it's still ongoing in a lot of parts of the world, but necessity is obviously the mother of all invention. So once COVID sort of hit and we got over sort of the shock of what was going on and started getting our heads around it, we had all of our events during that period via virtually via Zoom. Our speakers were then located anywhere. They didn't need to be locally based, so we weren't limited by travel expenses or costs or people's schedules in order to try and get them here face to face. We've now made multiple strategic investments. We're actively seeking opportunities to invest more of our funds in things that are going to provide more and more value to our members and also to our community at large. And life is a new normal. There's increased uncertainty and we need to adapt and be future ready. And that's very front of mind for us with everything to do with our financial strategy now. And we're in a very, very unique position in that we made a lot of money last year. And our financial situation as a chapter is very positive and growing. And in fact, we really need to spend some money for some financial management reasons. Our treasurer is very honoured us about what are we going to do. We have some great ideas on that. But just quickly, before I move to the next slide, a couple of the strategic investments that we have already made over the past year is obviously going to a number of cloud-based subscriptions and platforms. So we're spending money on that. The obvious one being Zoom. Even things like Dropbox storage we didn't have, and we were constantly in this storage fight.
Hi, everyone. Sorry that we had to end the presentation a little early. We realized we're very tight on time for the next session, and some of us behind the scenes need to jump over so we can get the next presenters ready to go. But since Deanna was kind enough to join us, if everyone could put their smiling video faces on and welcome Deanna. And let's pepper her with some questions. I mean, she's probably, what's the weather like, Deanna, in Houston right now?
Oh, it's probably about 80 degrees and a little overcast, but we're doing all right. We've had a lot of rain lately.
Oh. We just in Western Canada have been going through a heat wave, so it's been unseasonably warm for us here. It was plus 30 degrees Celsius, which is, what is that in Fahrenheit? Like 90s, I think, in Fahrenheit, something like that. So yeah, we're not used to that. Like where I live in Southern Alberta, we just had snow on the ground less than 2 weeks ago. So we went from extremes and we're kind of used to it. So anyways, welcome. And I know we have some people here who are, PD is their specialty within their chapters. So maybe they have some questions that they want to ask. I mean, I'll admit, when I watched you do the session live back in February, I thought this idea was so cool, such a great way to keep the energy and the excitement going with your members. Have you continued to do that throughout the rest of the chapter year since February? Maybe you could give us a little update since then.
Yeah, we haven't done another wine specific event, but we've held our networking nines each month. So some of them turned into more of a coffee discussion in the morning. And each networking nine though has a theme. We haven't done another alcohol one, but I haven't led one since then. So my next one would probably go back to that.
Cool. So how are you planning on, are you guys back to in-person sessions, or are you still doing stuff virtually?
So we are still virtual. Our chapter year starts over in July. So that's something with our new leadership, we're going to work to get back to in-person events. We recently sent out a survey to all of our members about their comfort level, things they were looking for at in-person events. I know the other chapters in the Houston area of PRSA, American Marketing Association, have just started in-person events. So people are interested. I know we are talking about in July doing a happy hour. nothing super formal, but just to kind of kick off our in-person events again, start with something small.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys are in like fully open, right, in Texas? Like you're basically at this point? Yeah. Yeah,
Correct. Yep.
yeah,
Everything's
we're still pretty much in lockdown here in many areas in Western Canada, and particularly, is anyone here from in Manitoba still? Our members in Manitoba are still going through quite a very active third wave, so they're really restricted. So yeah, we're still wearing masks. Still, many of our businesses are limited in what they can do. So, we look forward to returning like you guys ahead of us. So we were a little behind on the vaccination, so we're catching up, or yeah, we've caught up. So yeah, I'm talking lots, but did anyone have anything particular that they'd like to ask Deanna about? And
what were some of your themes that you did at your networking 9 events?
Oh, you're gonna have to rack my memory here. One again was a coffee, and that was more focused on coffee with conversation. Again, just a connection thing, more or less. I'd honestly, to remember what all of the different themes were, I'd have to go back and look on our website. Because
I'll check out your website.
Yeah, please do. Because sometimes not all of our board members attend these events really on purpose, so that we give others a chance to join in and kind of get to know each other. So
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kristen.
Sorry, Wendy. Oh, thanks. I was just curious about like doing with events and like going into, like, I know some people are really quite excited about the virtual component, but I know like a mixed virtual and in-person event can be tricky sometimes. Did you have any conversations or thoughts about that?
It's something our board has been talking about, and we've been shying away from hybrid events. At least that's the conversation so far. We don't feel like just simply sticking a camera or a microphone, at one of our in-person luncheons really gives the full effect to our members. And then you're looking at 2 different pricing structures, which complicates things for both online and in person. So I think all of our chapters, across the US and internationally, have all of these components to keep in mind and to figure out what's best for their chapter. But we have talked about having, those luncheons and still offering some sort of virtual programming. So I'm curious as to what exactly we're going to come up with in our new calendar year, which starts in July. So
my apologies, Deanna. We have such a big lineup of presentations and not a lot of time between sessions. So unfortunately, I have to close this one off. I encourage everyone to reach out to Deanna if you have any questions. I think her contact information was in the presentation, if I recall, and I will include the link, and I can also send you all her contact if you want to reach out and questions about the session, or just because she's a fellow IABC member and we want to all go to Houston at some point and we need someone to connect with. So I'm sure I'm putting her on the spot, but I'm going to say she probably would welcome us. So thank you so much, everyone. And we're going to flip on. We're going into the 2 breakout sessions. So see you on the flip side. Thank you.
Bye, Deanna. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks, Deanna.